Well, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina. I'm the host here. And today I have a guest who I've tried to get on my channel for a few years, I feel like now. Crista Jaeckel, welcome to Fiberchats.
Thank you. It's so great to be here. And thank you for asking me to be on your channel.
Well, I actually remember the moment we've met. So there was a small festival in downtown Boston and well, a couple years ago, like a few years ago. And I was scrolling and I'm looking at all the yarn out there. And then I see a ship.
Peace.
And I was like, oh my God, like I just have to have it. Like, never seen anything like this. They were adorable. They were so like full of spunk and character. And like you could see that like a person who put them there is a true artist and really likes the fiber arts.
Oh.
Tell me a little bit like your backstory. How did you find yourself making these bags and like how did it all start?
Well, so it's a really fun story. I guess it's a bit of a long journey. It started in well, so I used to make hats actually. I used to be a milliner and did that until I had my kids. And then it got too much for me. I was like, well, I'm not giving that business all my energy, and I'm not giving my kids all my energy. And it was not, I had to make a decision. So I decided to, be a full-time mom. And I've always sewn. And a friend recommended, they saw a opening for a class at JP Knit and Stitch, where they were looking for a sewing instructor for children. And I was very into, my kids were that age, between like, 6 and 8. And I was sort of, really ready to do something else and I was always sewing for them. And I was like, well, I think I can do this, and I went for an interview and I met Genevieve Day, who was the owner at that point of JP Knit and Stitch. And for those that don't know, JP Knit and Stitch I live in Roslindale in Boston, a sort of a suburb of a neighborhood of Boston, and Jamaica Plain is just one town over, and that's where JP Knit and Stitch was. And Genevieve employed me as the kids sewing instructor. And I think it was 2017, she reached out to me and she said, "Hey, do you think you can teach a block printing class?" And, if you're a creative person, you think you can really do everything. And I was like, I think I can do that because my background is actually in costume design. So I did, as part of costume design, take a textile design class, and we did do block printing, and lino carving and things like that. So I immediately said, yes, I can definitely teach that class. And I went home and I got all the books from the library. It's like, okay, now I have to really reteach myself because this is like 20 years ago probably that I did this class. Anyway, I taught the block printing class. It was a big success. And then it was round about, 2017, 2016, 2017 is when there was a lot of project bags around that had, people were really getting into project bags. And Genevieve said to me, well, why don't you make a few project bags and I'll sell them here for you in the shop. And that's really how I started. I started making just a very simple designs. And they sold them in JP Knit and Stitch, and they actually sold, and there was nobody more surprised than I was. I just couldn't believe that, when you start off something and you have a vision and you sort of just let it come out of you and people respond to it, it's always quite a thrill. And then she actually did the first, and I think this is where we met, the first Boston Farm to Fiber Festival downtown. And that's the first show I ever did.
I'm
And
so glad I discovered you so early on.
yes.
And for me, it's fine because like every time I get to the festival where you have a booth, I stop everything and I start filming because it's like then I come home and I start looking at those bags again. And what blows my mind, it's like they all so different. So even if it's the same block print, it's gonna be different background colors, so it's going to be the different ship colors, and it's very hard to actually choose the one you want to take home with you because you want to take them all.
That's sort of how it stays interesting for me as well. I'm constantly, I think it's the way I cook as well. I love trying new recipes all the time. And this is how I sort of approach my bags is yes, I have one block, but like you say, I will use a different fabric in the background. I will use different colors. And then also when you turn a block, you can make a whole different design out of the same block.
Well, let's go a little bit into like nitty-gritty of how you actually do that. So, like for people who never heard of block printing,
Mm.
explain us like what it is. Like pretend we are your class and just like give us the basics of block printing.
Okay, so I have some samples here of blocks that I carved, and this is sort of the full, what I call the four leaf block. And this is the nasturtium block. So basically, it's a rubber block that I print with, and you take very, very sharp tools to carve away the parts that you don't want in your design. So when I start designing, you normally start with a idea or a sketch. And then if you're satisfied with that idea or sketch, you transfer the sketch onto your rubber block, just like that. And then you use your little tools and you carve away the parts that you don't want to print. And then you do a test print first. So you apply the ink to your block and do a test print and then see if there's anything in the background that you still need to carve away. Sometimes it makes little marks and it takes away from your design. And then you start applying your ink to your block, and you can either use a foam roller or a special block printing roller, or you can use a foam dabber, which is what I tend to use most. And then you press onto your fabric and you apply pressure to the back of the print, lift it up, and then you have your beautiful print on the other side.
So when I listen to this, right, like I imagine myself doing that, and the very first thing I imagine happening is either the blocks are too close together and it's uneven spacing, or it bleeds, or some other disaster strikes. So when you were like playing with it and experimenting with that, was it like immediate success? Was it easy for you to
Oh,
figure it out?
heavens, no. No, it was definitely a learning curve. You have to experiment a lot. And then it's almost like you're warming up. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And you figure out how you, as an artist, like the way the design looks on, for instance, fabric, right? So I've made so many mistakes. And if I look back, sometimes, people say, why don't you do this anymore? And it's like, no, that's just, I've grown past that. I made so many mistakes in the past, but it's great to see where you start and where you go. So my advice for anyone that wants to try it is just keep going. The first piece that you print is not going to be fantastic, but keep going and warm up yourself, warm up. And the more confidence you get, the better you're going to get at it. And then, don't harp on your mistakes. I sometimes, if I make something, and I still make things that I don't actually like, but what I've learned is that I put them aside, and sometimes you can cut them up and use parts of it, and that's the part that you like. But I would say don't be afraid. Just keep playing because the results will be worth it.
Well, when you do something that you don't necessarily like, and it might not be for technical reasons, it might be just that's not how you envision it originally. Do
Right.
you ever try to sell it anyways? And are you ever surprised by like what you think is going to be super popular and it might not be, and things that you don't really like becoming popular?
Yes, definitely. I would say that, I love the sheepies, but I've made them for so many years now that they definitely something I make, but no, I'm not in love with them anymore. But they are definitely one of my best sellers. People love them. And I don't often look forward to making them, but when I'm busy with them, especially when I put the eyes, sometimes I do the mouth and the eyes in them, I fall in love with them. So it's a surprise sometimes. I do have pieces that I've decided I printed, and then I didn't like it, and then I need stock for a show. I go back, I take it off my shelf, I sew it into a bag, and it would be the first piece that sells. It's a very strange thing where it also depends on your mood of the day. I've figured out, like when you make something and you don't like it and you let it rest, the next day it looks different.
I'm very critical of your work because, like, I remember my sewing experience. I was probably 9 or 8, 9, something like this. And we were studying sewing in the home economics class
All right.
back when it was still taught. And I came home super proud of the apron that I made. And my mom looked at it and she was like, this should be like straight and not
Right.
line like that.
Yeah.
So it sort of like prevented me from like this expectation of perfection. Like I feel like stopped me from improving and like going for it. Do,
Yeah.
do you ever like feeling overcritical of your own work?
Yes, I do, especially if I start getting ready for a big show, and it's very hard because I would sometimes think, as you say, something is going to be popular and I make more of that, I make less of this, and then I find myself overthinking what I'm making, and saying, well, is this what people would like? Is this what people would like? And then the things that honestly sell the best is the pieces that are completely individual and that I just worked on. I didn't think about the sale of the project bag, I didn't think of the colors that other people might like, that's not my colors. If I do something straight from without thinking, and I guess it's more from your heart and your soul, those actually sell really, really well. And I have to, and honestly, it's a constant struggle. You have to give yourself pep talks all the time. Where you can say, well, you can't think like that. You can't be so critical. It's going to be all right. And my poor family that lives with me, they know sometimes, especially in the darker months, it's like, oh, this is going to be terrible. Nobody's going to like this. And they're like, it's okay. It's okay. It's going to be fine.
My husband always laughs at me because every once in a while I'll come to the kitchen and I'm gonna be like, you know what? I should just stop. Like there is no point to this. And he just rolls his eyes and goes, give it a couple days and then you're gonna get busier than ever. And
Right,
he's
right.
usually right about that.
It's so true.
Well, are there ever shows that just don't work? Like you come with your best product and nobody's interested, or it is like, do you have a serious customer base by now, like with all the shows that you do?
Well, so it's interesting because earlier on, I was lucky enough to be introduced to the fiber and knitting community through JP Knit and Stitch. And when I just started, I tried a few other shows that was not specific to a specific customer, and I realized early on that it was really hard to just do craft shows or neighborhood shows because the people that really wanted to buy the bags I made, I needed to find my audience. I needed to find that specific niche for my bags. And that's why I decided not to do any of the other shows anymore, but just to basically concentrate on knitting the knitting community and knitters, and do project bags and call my bags project bags. Because a lot of time people say, oh, you should sell these, at this store, and you should sell this here, and you should do this show. And I always say, I've tried that, but I try to now stay with my community and stay with, my customers that I've sort of built up through the years. And because it's a labor intensive process. my bags, you know. So I tend to not do as many shows, but I'm getting back into it because, you know, my youngest daughter is now she's a senior in high school, so I start having more time. So this year and last year a little bit, but this year I'm trying to do a few more shows than I normally do. Um, but do fiber shows, definitely, you know, and being a knitter myself, I know what I like to knit from and what I need in my life, you know, and when I go to shows, I listen to customers, and through the years, I've definitely taken advice from people or suggestions that they say, oh, you know, we'd like a bigger bag or we'd like a smaller bag. But it definitely helps to stay within the fiber shows.
How many varieties of bags do you make nowadays?
Too many. Some people say it's confusing, but I love having bags with a big variety in shapes, but also price points. You know, so if you want to buy just a small, tiny drawstring bag, you know, pre-made that I printed for $10, you can buy that. If you want to buy one of my one-of-a-kind bags, you can spend $200 on a bag. And that's why I have so many sizes. And also, I do have, you know, and I'm so grateful, I have repeat customers. And it's wonderful for me to offer different sizes, different shapes, different ideas, because then those customers feel also engaged again, you know, instead of just having one size that I just, yeah, keep making.
Well, do you ever think in terms of collections? Like, and every knitter needs a really big bag, and then matryoshka style,
Yes.
smaller, smaller until you get the pencil case.
I know, right? Yes, I do. I love doing that, especially for the big shows. You know, the big shows in October. I love making like a whole collection from the biggest bag to the smallest bag. And I actually do love just making collections. You know, I love getting an idea and thinking, okay, so I don't know if you remember the eyeball collection I had a while ago. You know, I it was really funny. I enjoyed that so much. It was one of my funnest designs. Wanted to do it for such a long time. But I make little collections of prints and then do them in the different sizes. And actually, the one that I love right now, the new size, is this festival shopping size, which is just really a great bag because you can fold it up and take it with to all the fiber festivals and then open it up, and it's a really giant bag. So,
And it's very light, so you can put a lot of yarn in that, and it's not going to be feeling overwhelmingly heavy.
exactly. And I made it on purpose. I have no stabilizer in there or anything, so it's really a flexible bag and as you say, it's really big. So that's my that and the little notions pouches that I started making that's more of a boxy bottom. That's sort of the newest shapes um I'm doing right now. And then I also started working on I just started making these in January where it's more of a square bottom. So it can stand up, you know, next to your chair or next to your, or on your table even when you're knitting, which I really like to knit from. So I'm always trying new sizes and new styles.
Well, there is two parts to the process. You have to come up with creative idea of what you're gonna block print on the fabric, and then you actually have to create the bag, which is like
Yeah,
more labor intensive, right?
yeah.
You ever get like creative blocks when you don't know what else to create or like what new idea to come up with for the artistic part of that? And thus having that manual process of just making a bag helps you to get out of that funk.
Yeah, it does happen. And it normally happens when I force myself, you know, and I say, okay, I have to go into the studio and I have to come up with something new and interesting. And that's when it's just like not there at all. You know, for last year's Rhinebeck, you know, festivals around Rhinebeck, I made a collection of sort of rainbow bags with gold you know, arches. And I realized that I made those panels in March of last year and let them rest a little bit. Um, it's really it is hard because the way I've structured my business is that I constantly have to come up with new designs. And that's normally when I feel totally blocked is I go back to my sketchbook and I just take pens and pencils and I just doodle and draw. I go to museums, I look at paintings. I look, at textile design books. I try to stay away from looking online too much because, you are sometimes influenced by what other people are doing. And I want to keep it sort of my own and I want to try and keep it fresh as much as I can. We're all influenced by what we see anyway online, but I try to minimize that. And I sometimes, when I just say, okay, I'm just going to just take out my ink and I'm just going to print and see what happens. That's how I get out of that block, that creative block that I have. It really is the best way to just start from a point where you don't, or start with something you don't normally do. Like for me, it's the doodling, and break through that blockage that you have. And sometimes what I like doing now is I've started doing fabric painting as well as the block printing. And the painting seems to really help the creativity flow, because you're looking at if you paint a circle, what can you put in the circle, and you stop thinking so much about the design and you sort of more in the moment.
Do you consider like teaching classes on how to do everything you do nowadays?
I would love to start doing that again. I haven't done that for a very long time. And yeah, I think I would consider that. I would.
I would totally take a class with you. I can even probably make that class happen in one of my our local yarn stores.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Yeah, I think we should work on that. That'll be lovely.
That,
Yeah, I would do that.
that sounds like a great plan for me.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you are a knitter and you used to crochet as well. What does knitting even mean to you? Like what role does it play in your life? And how do you find time to knit nowadays?
Um, well, so I changed from being a crocheter to a knitter a while ago because I was just so in love with the fabric knitting was making. If you go up to samples and you look at those beautiful stitches, I just had to change from crochet to knitting needles. And for me, I think I'm also in a knitting group, which is amazing because, it's so encouraging. We are constantly sharing projects and encouraging each other. And I think knitting has become just part of my creativity and part of who I am. My grandma was an amazing knitter. And, I can still hear her needles go and so fast that you couldn't even see what she was doing. And I think it's knitting also connects me to my grandma and my mom. My mom is not a great knitter. She knits now a little bit more than when she's older. But I think I love the fact that when I knit, I can't think of anything else if I'm following a really complex pattern. So my brain is resting. I knit at night when I sit with my husband and watch TV shows. But you can't always do all your knitting then. When you have to pay attention, I have to sometimes say to him, okay, please don't talk to me right now. I need to read this pattern.
I'm counting.
Right, I'm counting or I'm trying to understand or I'm on YouTube trying to look something up. And I think that's what's so great about knitting is people always say, well, I can't do that. And really, I had to teach myself knitting. I mean, I was, like you, I was taught in school, but I remember making a snake and it was just like growing bigger and bigger instead of, you know, and so I was terrible at school at knitting. But I think just the concentration knitting brings, the colors you can choose, that speaks to me, the different yarns you can use. And it's a total you engage your brain in a different way. I absolutely love it.
Well, when I'm thinking about like the generation of our grandparents, knitting was more for practical reasons. It was hard to buy clothes. Knitted items usually were cheaper than what you could buy in store. You could adjust it better to fit the size and things like that. Nowadays, knitting is this like sort of luxurious pastime where you can play with expensive yarns and you can learn new techniques, and it's less about what you make and more about the process of it.
True.
Is it practical still, like when you approach knitting, is it still this practical approach or more over artist approach to knitting?
For me, because I like sewing my own clothes as well. I Right now the way I approach my knitting is I make something that I want to wear. You know, it's interesting that that idea of practical, versus right now for me it feels like I'm trying to bridge both of those. I want a practical garment that I can wear in winter to keep me warm because I'm always cold. But I also want it to be beautiful. I wanted to have sharp colors. I wanted to have contrast. I wanted to be cozy. And so I try to choose the projects I knit um, by, okay, what am I going to wear it with? I don't want to knit something that's just going to be in my closet or on my shelf. Right now I have enough shawls. So I'm trying to, I'm getting to be a better knitter. So I'm trying to make sweaters. And so I'm like, okay, I have a heavy sweater now. I want a lighter sweater. I'm going to wear this with these pants, or if I go to a show, I can wear it with a skirt. So I'm trying to bridge the gap between, I appreciate really, really good yarn, and that's what I want to work with, but I want to be able to wear an item. I
Well,
don't.
I hear there's a lot of hobbies happening in this house of yours. So there is sewing for yourself, there is knitting, there is bags, obviously the business part of it. What's your crafting stash looks like?
Well, my fabric stash is pretty intense. Just because I have been collecting for many, many, many years. I have a hefty fabric stash and I just bought some more because, spring sewing is around the corner. I also have this love for vintage clothing, and I have a collection of vintage gloves. And I think this comes with my background of costume design. I just have a deep love for that. My yarn stash, I have tried very hard to keep down. So the way I try to approach Rhinebeck is
How is it working for you?
well, so far, yeah, I don't know. This year, I think I didn't do so great. But I try to buy for certain patterns, and then during the year, not buy from anywhere else, and just knit with the yarn I bought from Rhinebeck. But of course, you're like, oh, I need another skein of this. Oh, I need some alpaca. I need this. So this year was, I would say, 50-50. But I try to not have such a big yarn stash just because it feels like I can't keep up with it. I would like you know, to at least have a plan for my yarn. Doesn't always work. I have several skeins, of course, that have no plans, but that's how I go into it. I try to do that. With fabric, I'm definitely still more of an impulse shopper. I do love going to thrift stores because you can find other people's stashes that they get rid of, fabric wise. And I found some good fabric there, but I also have a collection of fabric that I bought when my kids were little, and now they're just sentimental to me because I made little pants for this one or a quilt with this fabric, So every year I go through my fabric stash and donate a bunch of things. But yeah, I am a collector at heart, for sure.
Well, is is it ever difficult for you to part with specific bag? Like you make something and you don't feel like selling it and you want to keep it for yourself. Does that happen?
It does, and the worst part is it happens when it's finished, I say, this is a great bag. I'm going to keep it back. And then as I'm packing up for a show, I'm like, no, I need to sell this. My end goal is to make money, not to, keep all the things I make. And then when a customer picks it up and they love and adore it, I am happy to part with it. I do have what I do keep is the pieces of fabric that's left over from my favorite designs. But the biggest thrill is, when I go to shows and people come and show me the bags that they bought. And I can see these collections that I made that I was absolutely in love with, but couldn't reproduce. But then my customers bring it back to me, and that's like seeing a relative again. It's like, oh, they're getting so much joy out of it. I loved creating that, and that is an absolute thrill for me. So I have a few things that I've kept behind, but most of the bags that I absolutely adore go to my customers.
Well, you are the one woman show, and it's a lot of balls to be holding in the air, basically. You have the whole production that you have to do, and then you're going to the shows, and then you have to market yourself on Instagram and all of these things. Is there like something that you would love to put on somebody else's shoulders if you could?
Yes. I have recently found a small scale production sewer that I can sort of employ on an as needed basis, which has been amazing for me. And she helps me with the smaller bags. She helps me with the handles. Of course, I guess I would like the control of most things in my business, so I still sew most of my bags myself. It's just like I said, some of the components I started giving to somebody else to make, which has helped me tremendously because that helps me to be able to make more bags myself and print more bags. Um, I do think that the website design I would love to give over to someone else and have my website, you know, give it a big makeover. Um, it's really hard to do all that marketing. And, I can't help but sometimes think that I'm missing things. It would be lovely to give my marketing to someone else. But as it is, a business is up and down, and you just jump in where you can, and you just do it. You just do it all.
Well, as a costume designer, former costume designer, and an artist, do you ever imagine like a solo fashion show or exhibit in some art gallery?
Wow, I have not actually.
Oh, we
That's
have to talk about it. It's like it's such a brilliant idea to have just a fashion show with your bags.
Oh, that would be so fun. That would be really, really fun to do, and to work on a special collection. I've had really fun collabs in the past with some knitwear designers and yarn dyers, and I'm always looking for more, opportunities to show my bags and to, keep life interesting, right? And keep creating in different ways. I'm always striving towards that.
So is there like anything that you're preparing now for the next Rhinebeck season? Like how
Yes.
far in advance do you work with your idea?
Well, I do have to start thinking about it because, for the amount of bags I have to produce, I have to start soon. The one thing that I'm working on is last year I had a small collection of this. It's what I call the drop cloth collection, which use my actual drop cloth that I print on and then sew bags from it. Let me find an interesting spot. There you can see it's starting to look good. So, and it sold really, really well last year. And so I'm working on a drop cloth to make a bigger collection of the drop cloth bags. And then the new line that I'm working on is like this big festival shopping bag is printed on linen. So I'm working on linen, to so I can have a special linen collection and all my other bags as well. And then I'm going to definitely bring more of the square bottom bags, for sure. And as I said earlier, I'm really into the painting. Like I think you can see it here and there, like painting the fabric instead of stamping on it, or a combination of the two. So there's a lot of things going on in my head, but I'm definitely going to bring a few special collections to the Rhinebeck shows.
Well, when people think about somebody being self-employed, they're thinking, oh, it's like the person is totally in control of their time. They can go for leisurely walks and they can do whatever they like. Do you ever stop thinking about your business?
Um, I do sometimes. I think the month of December is a good time for me to stop thinking. Although the most of December, I'm worried about sales, and then the lack of sales in January. So it's like, but I do tend to slow down from January to March. I have definitely more time to develop new ideas, but I guess the answer is then no. I never
Yeah,
stop
because
thinking.
yeah, it sounds very relaxing, except you're thinking about new ideas.
But that to me is the fun part. Like I say, you can go for a walk and you can see a seed on the ground and you can go, oh, what is going on here? Could that be a print? Or look at the combination of the browns, or you go to a museum and you look at, a painting and you say, oh, this is beautiful, and so I feel that always is not so much work, but just who I am. You're constantly observing and it's filling up your creative brain just all the time. And without that, I would be lost, honestly.
Well, I mentioned to you that like when the first time I saw your bags, I was stopped in my tracks, but I also love your displays. So like whenever I go to the show, I always film your booth because it's so beautifully like displayed. Tell us a little bit, like for the people who just love to come to the yarn festival and shop there, tell us like what goes into the that setup, like from the day of you arriving to the show and the whole setup, like how much does it take of your energy?
Oh, it takes so much. And it starts actually way before you go to the shows, right? Because my studio where we're talking at right now is in my house, in my attic. And we have two finished rooms up here. And what happens is basically as I start making, I would say in middle September, if I go to the big show in October, in September, I start setting up in the other room across here, and I make a little booth for myself because it's very, you have to make sure that you have a vision before you go. It's very hard when you get there, you're stressed, you're unloading, you find your booth, and then all of a sudden things don't look exactly like thought it would look. But it really helps to, before you go to one of these shows, to map it out and to say, okay, I think last year I invested in these really great grid walls finally, and okay, so if you hang this here, how are you going to display it? And for me, because I have so many designs and many sizes, how am I going to display it? Am I going to display, say, all the sheepy bags on one wall? Am I going to display all the large drawstring bags on one wall? You have to sort of play with it and see visually what makes sense. And then I also think really hard about how the bags will look, and my bags are very colorful. So in the beginning, I was a bit more timid. And then eventually, like I think 2 years ago, I decided, no, the bags are colorful. The background needs to be colorful too, and so some of the shelving I have is pink, some things are painted blue. I have a natural tablecloth, and then I put like overlays of pink and brown and blue. So the same colors I use in my bags always also goes on my tables. And So yeah, when you get to the shows, it's a stressful time because you find your spot, you find your neighbors, and you check in with your neighbors. How, can you put up fabric walls because that always helps to display the bags better. So if you can't see through, you can only see the bags. That helps. Um, and then it's trial and error. It takes at least, 2 hours to set up because you put things somewhere, you step away, you go, no, that doesn't look great. It's really like decorating and setting up a mini shop.
Oh,
It's a lot.
when it comes to your customers, and I'm sure it's brilliant when you see somebody walking around with your bag and it's really heartwarming. Are there ever difficult customers? Are there ever people demanding refunds and telling you that their bag broke or whatever, like putting it in the mud and then expecting you to fix it somehow?
I have not had that.
Oh, I'm so glad.
I know. I've had one bag that a strap broke, and the customer contacted me, and it was completely my fault. And she sent it back to me, and I've repaired it for her, and I sent it back to her, and she was lovely. She was lovely about it. She's like, I definitely overloaded this bag. I put in my groceries. It was too heavy, and the strap broke. And I was like, no, send it back. I'll do it for you. And I've been very lucky where customers sometimes ask me how to clean, and I explain how to spot clean and how to revive your bag. But I also have told customers if you want to send it back to me and pay for the shipping, I will do it for you and send it back. But no, my customers have been amazing, just amazing. I am very, very lucky.
Well, when we talked at the beginning, and you mentioned that you used to have a hat business and then you stopped, do you see yourself stopping? Do you see yourself slowing down with this bag business? Do you see yourself reinventing yourself again?
I I'm really enjoying what I'm doing right now, and so it's well, like we said earlier, every January I think I'm going to stop the business, and 2 weeks later I feel better. But right now I'm pretty invested. I feel like I've grown so much in what I'm doing. I can see the bags maybe going in a different direction. I can see making different kinds of bags. Right now it works really well for where I am with my life. Um, but who knows? Who knows, right? I might 10 years from now decide that I want to go into quilting. I don't think so, but
Oh,
right
you have the skills for it. You already know the machinery, so you are like one step ahead of me in quilting world.
now, well, we'll see, but I do love what I'm doing right now, and I'm going to stay with bag making and stay in the knitting world, which I've really found very supportive and encouraging, and I thoroughly enjoy it.
Well, I cannot wait to see your new collection at Rhinebeck and at other shows. I make sure to stop by and say hello every time I see you at the shows, and I'm lucky enough that you are local to me.
Yes, I know. It's so
And
fun.
I think, yeah, that fashion show is a good idea.
You see, now you make me sweat. It's like just thinking about it.
Well, Krista, thank you so very much for being my guest today. I really enjoyed our chat and getting to know you a little bit better. And I'm looking forward to seeing you soon at one show or another.
Yes, thank you so much. And I'm going to send you a code for everybody that's watching to get 15% off bags if they're interested in buying some bags from me.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm gonna put this information in the description of this video. So guys, you don't want to miss that opportunity. You don't get sale ever. So that's a really good deal. Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
really might get one myself.
There you go.
So thank you so much, Krista. Thank you.
Thank you. It was so fun. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.